Welcome to this week's astrology forecast. Today we're talking about the week of Monday, June 2nd through Sunday, June 8th, 2025. This week's pretty interesting. We're going to start out with a first quarter moon in Virgo that's going to shake things up and add even more intellectual and mercurial energy to an already pretty Mercury ruled chart. And then later on in the week, Venus will change signs and enter Taurus. So that's really exciting to have another planet in domicile for once. We've had a lot of detriment energy lately, so definitely exciting to see Venus go from Aries, where she's in detriment, to Taurus, where she's at home. And then later on in the week after that, we'll have Mercury change signs as well. So let's just get right into it and go through the day by day forecast. So starting out Monday, June 2nd, this to me looks like the most volatile day of the week, and that's because we start off right off the bat with the first quarter moon. The first quarter moon is really going to affect both Monday and Tuesday because it happens pretty late Monday Eastern time. So depending on your time zone, the quarter moon may technically happen late Monday or early Tuesday, so either June 2nd or June 3rd. But either way, Moon is in Virgo basically all day on Monday. This is another kind of weird technicality. So depending on your time zone, Moon enters Virgo either very early Monday or very late Sunday, if that makes sense. So basically, for most of us, we have Moon basically in Virgo all day Monday, and this is going to be a really intense dynamic. Moon in Virgo is not usually particularly intense, but because the Sun is in Gemini, Moon being in Virgo means that the Moon is it's within orb of squaring the Sun basically. Um, so you can say even by noon Eastern time, Moon has reached 6 degrees Virgo, and so it's approaching that quarter moon to the Sun. So again, technically the quarter moon happens later on in the day. But with Moon and Virgo squaring Sun and Gemini, it's pretty interesting because although these signs square, both of the signs are ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is very strong right now since Mercury is in Gemini. So kind of wherever you look, like all the main highlights of this chart, the main dominating factors are kind of mercurial. They're both the luminaries are in Mercury ruled signs. So that suggests that we may be very busy at this time. We may be very scattered. We may be having like lots of little conversations, lots of chit chat, lots of connections with different people, different places. We may all be speaking a lot, chatting a lot, learning a lot. Mercurial energy is attracted to information, and that information can there could be a wide range to these types of energies because both Virgo and Gemini are mutable signs. So Mercury is interested in any kind of information. It doesn't care if it's really just shallow like gossip or crude humor, or it could be like really profound, deep concepts and ideas. Mercury wants all of it. So with these Mercury energies and with this kind of quarter moon in Virgo happening, we may all be kind of embracing these energies. We may all be more curious, more chatty, more intellectual. Mercury can also be very experimental. So although Moon is in Virgo, which is usually more cautious, more conservative, um, Moon in Virgo, because it's being squared by Sun in Gemini, and because Mercury's in Gemini, it's bringing out this more kind of Geminian side of Mercury, this more like experimental and open side. Also, another reason why this is a little bit more wild and outgoing than your typical Virgo moon is because of that first quarter aspect, the first quarter square. The first quarter moon, I always say, is probably the most volatile part of the lunar cycle. So this is an excellent time for starting something new. The energies are kind of shoving us into new territory. So this could be a very stressful energy for some. Any first quarter moon can make us a little bit restless or anxious because again, it's pushing us toward change. It's suggesting making a change or taking action. But especially with all this, Mercury energy. Mercury is a very nervous kind of energy. It makes us nervous, makes us restless. We may be fidgeting, we may be I don't know, we may just be constantly busy because we're thinking of different things, thinking of, making lists and making to-do lists, making like this is the energy of like errands and um so so yeah, we may be, I don't know, just there's just way more thinking energy going on, and that for whatever reason it makes us like nervous or agitated. Um so yeah, when you add that to a first quarter moon, which is also like kind of agitated and um it suggests a lot of nervous energy. So it may be hard for us to relax on Monday and Tuesday. You may notice a lot of people are kind of wound up. They're talking a lot. They're it's almost like this makes me think it's gonna look like everyone's had too much caffeine. Like maybe some of them actually have, I guess. Um, what else? This is definitely a great time to start anything new, especially in relation to organizing or learning, or making some kind of like it could be a change in your life that's physical or literal in nature, yet at the same time it's also mentally oriented. So for instance, like, I don't know, making a change with your learning, like going to school or not going to school, changing what kind of information you consume on a regular basis. um, Anything like that would be really good to change Monday or Tuesday. um, Going to Tuesday, June 3rd. So honestly, the energies are still pretty similar to Monday. Both Monday and Tuesday are really high energy. Again, really great for starting something new, changing your, the information you consume. All that continues on Tuesday. Also, a lot of frenetic energy, scattered energy. People may be stressed, anxious, fidgeting, changing things. There's a slight difference because by Tuesday, Moon crosses over the South Node. Um, so this could actually bring up some kind of like darker energies for some people. Um, we may be, I don't know, focusing a lot on organization, and I know sometimes when you organize things you can kind of like dig up things from your past, and I guess that could be a metaphor, but also very literally as well. So this could be what this is like. By organizing and changing things, we may be kind of bringing up things from the past, with Moon crossing over South Node in Virgo. I also wanted to mention the Sun is getting close to squaring the nodes. So in other words, like this quarter moon was almost conjunct the South Node, kind of like it's not within, it wasn't within orb to be a conjunction by aspect, but the quarter moon was at least in the same sign as the South Node. Um, so in other words, what I'm getting at is, with the moon crossing over the nodes, Sun is kind of loosely starting to square the nodes, and still the moon, kind of. So in other words, like this could be an actually really big turning point for us, on a kind of like soul level, especially if you have a lot of mutable placements, so Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, or Pisces. There could be some kind of large pivot in your life right now. Like you're turning direction, you're reaching a sort of checkpoint, um, and I don't know, you're like pivoting. Something's changing, if that makes sense. Going to Wednesday, June 4th, uh, Moon continues through Virgo, and then around noon or just after noon Eastern time, Moon enters Libra, which, so I really, really love this. For one, Moon, I typically love Moon in Libra because I believe Moon does pretty well in both the Venus ruled signs. Um, Moon in Libra suggests that we're thinking things through and we're being very considerate of others. So it's a very peaceful transit. But this is especially true because of how the Moon in Libra relates to the Sun right now. With Sun being in Gemini, Moon entering Libra it's going to start to form a trine to the Sun. Libra and Gemini are both air signs. They have a lot in common. So Moon in Libra is basically agreeing with the Sun. It's making a strong, kind of harmonious connection. And that's only going to get stronger as we continue a little bit farther into the week as well. So this just shows that there's kind of a huge change halfway through Wednesday. Monday, Tuesday, and maybe even early Wednesday are, really intense and kind of volatile, and we're overthinking everything. And but maybe making some good changes as well, maybe learning a lot or organizing or what have you. But then again, Wednesday's this huge shift where there's still a lot of intellectual energy. We still have three planets in Gemini. Um, Moon in Libra, is also intellectual, very rational, very studious. But again, the difference is it's a way more harmonious dynamic. It's way more oriented towards stability. Not only is Libra more focused on stability, but also the aspect again that Moon is starting to make with the Sun. So yeah, we're entering much more fun energy. Libra is also ruled by a benefic. It's ruled by Venus. So Libra can. I think Libra is just a more fun sign than Virgo, especially to experience with a transit like this. Oh, one aspect for Wednesday. When Venus. Speaking of Venus, Venus sextiles Jupiter. So Venus at 28 Aries is sextiling Jupiter at 28 Gemini. So that just adds this like really fun, harmonious energy we have. Um, both the benefics, Venus and Jupiter, but both Venus and Jupiter are called the major benefics because they are beneficial. They make life easier. They make life more fun, generally speaking. So especially when we get Venus and Jupiter like sextile, making this harmonious aspect like this, it shows they're agreeing with each other. They're supporting each other. Um, so it just shows that the pleasure is like relatively easy to find right now. What's interesting though with this aspect is both Venus and Jupiter are in detriment, with Jupiter in Gemini, Venus in Aries. So that shows. So this is going to sound contradictory, but recently in the past few weeks, we may have had to look kind of outside the box for our pleasure. We may be finding new pleasure that we wouldn't have expected. We may be enjoying like different things that we don't usually enjoy, or don't expect to enjoy. So with this aspect, it's really interesting. Both Venus and Jupiter are at the end of their kind of respective transits. They're getting ready to enter new signs. Um, and so it's really interesting. So both are kind of out of place, but they're both making this really harmonious conversation, and as they're preparing to exit. So that just shows that we may have learned a lot when it comes to what we find enjoyable and what we find pleasurable. We may have learned a lot, and this is kind of a confirmation of that, and it's allowing us to find like stronger pleasure today, I guess. So it's adding yet another really harmonious aspect to this day. Going to Thursday, June 5th, Mercury squares the nodes. So Mercury at 23 Gemini squaring the nodes at 23 of Virgo and Pisces. Um, so again, that just shows that we're at a checkpoint. There's a lot of change happening right now just because there's so much mutable energy. Nodes are in mutable signs, plus three planets in Gemini. So a lot changing. Like literally, the seasons are changing now. But also on a deeper level, we're learning a lot, adapting a lot. Adaptation is kind of the name of the game right now. Mercury also on the same day sextiles Mars. So Mercury at 23 Gemini sextiling Mars at 23 Leo. So that's showing some kind of cooperation between the mercurial energy and the ambitious energy, if that makes sense. So, in other words, we may be very aware of our ambitions. We may be able to communicate more readily about our ambitions. And what I really love about this is Mars is pretty strong in Leo. I think Mars in Leo is one of the strongest signs for Leo, and Mercury is of course at home in Gemini. So both are making this harmonious connection or conversation, but both are pretty strong right now as well. So in other words, we're very proud, we're very strong in our ambitions. We're also, relatively like intellectual and very curious right now. So both of those very different energies are blending in a really harmonious and complementary way. Going to Friday, June 6th, Venus enters Taurus. That's one of the two major events of this week. I'd actually go as far as to say that this is probably the most major event of the week, especially because, like I said in the intro, Venus is leaving her sign of detriment and entering her sign of domicile. So it's a really intense ingression. Um, And especially because Venus is such a pleasant and positive energy, it really comes in handy to have Venus in her home sign. um, and especially because we've had both Venus and Jupiter, both the benefics, uh, debilitated, right? They've both been in detriment. So it may have been especially hard to find pleasure, or what we'd usually find pleasurable we may not have. Also, with Venus and Jupiter in detriment recently, that would indicate difficulty or intense changes economically as well, which I think that's been accurate. So, or also like out of the box, looking outside the box, out of the box ideas, when it comes to values, pleasure, commodities. So financially as well as just with pleasurable and what we value. So anyway, with Venus entering Taurus, it's a huge change. It suggests coming back to things we would more traditionally find valuable. It suggests more abundance, like financially, economically. What else? I think the reason why is because Venus rules Taurus. Taurus is all about like growth, but stable growth, right? Taurus is the middle of spring, so things just grow at a very stable, very steady pace. It's almost just kind of like taken. You can almost take it for granted. The pleasure, the abundance, it kind of just comes naturally in Taurus season. So Taurus is all about just letting the pleasure come to you. Taurus is a very secure sign. It's very kind of inwardly confident, and so I think that's why Venus is so strong in Taurus. It aligns with, Taurus and Venus align with each other. Venus is all about getting what we want, not by necessarily working super hard for it, or like, attacking somebody to get what we want. It's more about just, I don't know, just having a really positive energy, and attracting what we want, kind of just by, what's the word, like, by attraction, by law of attraction, maybe. Just by, like, just accepting what we want, getting it just by wanting it, if that makes sense. So really strong placement, and really great to have, especially considering all the detriment placements we've had recently. um, and only other thing I would say about that is, Mercury, like I said, is at home. So now we have having two planets at home is a pretty big deal. And I'd almost add Mars, even though I know technically Mars doesn't rule Leo, but again, it's a really strong placement, really strong transit. So yeah, for the first time in a long time, we have like multiple inner planets out in their home signs. So it's really great. It just suggests that we may feel more like ourselves now. Things may be slightly easier on a collective level, or maybe more straightforward, more easy to understand. Also on Friday, Mercury sextiles Chiron. Mercury's been very busy. Mercury's traveling very quickly. So Mercury at 25 Gemini sextiles Chiron at 25 Aries. Lots of sextiles this week. So with Mercury sextile Chiron, that suggests that we are more able to have a nuanced conversation about potentially some very difficult topics. So um, anything that has to do with like our pain, our personal trauma, our personal wounds, um, we may be more able to communicate those in an effective way, rather than just like screaming or like tearing something down, like Chiron and Aries might normally be more apt to do. Mercury in Gemini is, it is channeling that energy, but it's very intellectual. So in other words, on Friday we may be more likely to have conversations about really deep topics, intense topics. Um, this could be excellent for you know something psychological like therapy, or maybe making a breakthrough with a relationship. Maybe there's been like some kind of distance in a relationship, or some kind of irritation, some kind of issue. This might be a really great energy for maybe becoming more aware of a different part of a relationship, or facilitating some kind of conversation in a productive way, a curious way, but I hopefully a non-threatening way. On the other hand, I could see this being aggressive communication. Like it could go either way. Um, could be nuanced, therapeutic, attentive, in both directions, or it could be tactless, um, and kind of just what's the word, like impulsive, like impulsively just saying what's on your mind, just throwing it out there, without really considering things, or like it could completely go either way. Gemini can go either way, Mercury can go either way, and then we're channeling in Chiron and Aries, which is very volatile and intensely passionate. We're channeling that through this aspect. So again, it could go either way. I would say to just kind of like look out for both. People may be acting strange today, and this would explain why. Um, but again, there could be some really, really strong, excellent conversations today as well. Okay, and then otherwise, Moon continues through Libra, so it's um, still otherwise harmonious for sure. Going to Saturday, June 7th. Um, Moon does enter Scorpio either very late Friday or very early Saturday, depending on your time zone. So basically, for most of us, we have Moon in Scorpio basically all weekend. So again, this changes the vibe. Moon is of course gaining light at this time. It's been gaining light for some time now, but we are beginning to approach what will be a full moon. That does happen next week, but I just wanted to kind of mention that because it is relevant. Things are building. There's more activity generally, kind of building up here. I do think it's interesting that um, only a day after Venus enters Taurus, Moon enters Scorpio. So basically, the Moon opposes Venus as it's entering Scorpio, if that makes sense. So this kind of, I think this really highlights the Scorpio Taurus axis, which is all about kind of possession and how we support our needs in a long term way. Um, so, in other words, this could bring about, um, there could be major changes like financially or economically today. There could be major changes with politics surrounding finances and economics throughout the world. It could also bring about major changes in personal relationships, and again, it's all about how we support ourselves in a long term way, whether that's physical, financial, emotional, mental, etc. We could also be making huge changes to our investments, our values and what we choose to invest in could be changing really largely on Saturday. Other than that, Moon entering Scorpio, Moon is in fall in Scorpio, so it's kind of out of place there. We may feel a little bit, we may feel just like slightly uneasy. There could be some kind of intense emotions for some of us. What's interesting is when we combine Sun and Gemini with Moon and Scorpio, these are extremely different signs, but one of the connections is that both of these signs are extremely interested in, well, they're basically extremely interested in everything. Like they're both hyper curious. Like they're hyper fixated on figuring things out and getting to like the root of something, and seeing how something works. And they're both extremely perceptive when it comes to people and psychology. So we may be picking up on a lot right now, which is really interesting because it almost reminds me of what we were experiencing at the beginning of the week with Moon and Virgo. Now we have another intensely curious, intensely perceptive combination between the luminaries again. So it looks like we're learning a crazy amount this week. We're picking up on a lot of detail that we may have not before. Going to Sunday, June 8th. Um, Moon continues through Scorpio, so again, it's building intensity. Again, Sunday's gonna feel a lot like Saturday. I do think Saturday is a little different though because of that Moon opposing Venus aspect. Um, I don't usually talk about lunar aspects in these forecasts, other than with the Sun. That's different because of the quarter moons and full moons and whatnot. Um, but the reason why I mentioned I really think Moon opposing Venus on Saturday. So I'm going to go back to Saturday real quick. But the reason why I think Moon opposing Venus is such a big deal is because of what I said. They're both at the very beginning of their respective signs. So that's why I think that's so significant. So that will kind of die down on Sunday, but we may still be experiencing, whatever started on Saturday, whatever that new change was with, values, investments, finances, etc. Uh, we may still be experiencing that change on Sunday, if that makes sense. It may still be like in the works or kind of just affecting us, if that makes sense. But other than that, the chart for Sunday looks pretty similar to Saturday. We still may feel kind of like off beat or off base, feeling slightly unsettled with Moon and Scorpio, but also extremely perceptive. This is There's a lot of really intelligent energy between Gemini and Scorpio. For Sunday, there is an aspect which is pretty interesting. Mercury crosses over Jupiter at 29 Gemini, which is really interesting for a couple of reasons. One is that this is the last degree of Gemini. So both Mercury and Jupiter are in the process of leaving Gemini at almost the exact same time. Um, Technically, though, Jupiter will enter Gemini, or excuse me, Jupiter will leave Gemini and enter Cancer one day later. So that's going to happen on Monday. So that'll be in next week's forecast. But basically having them change signs only one day apart is pretty interesting. We're having this huge shift from Gemini to Cancer. Um, but Mercury and Jupiter conjunct at 29 Gemini, this is going to be especially intense. Anytime you have an aspect at the first or last degree of a sign, it intensifies it. The last degree of Gemini has been associated with like crises. Um, Jupiter does tend to kind of soften things. It brings about, abundance, as you probably know. What's weird though about this as well is that Jupiter is in detriment in Gemini while Mercury is at home in Gemini. So Mercury is clearly kind of the more dominant one here. It's the one more able to be like traditionally strong, or to behave kind of how we would expect it to. Jupiter is more kind of out of place. Both these planets though are very intellectual. Both are about learning, and both are about kind of branching out and experiencing new things. Um, so they do have a lot in common. I actually think Mercury Jupiter aspects tend to be pretty positive. They tend to blend actually pretty well together. So this is really showing that we may be intensely curious, or trying new things, experiencing something new. There could be some kind of really sudden, like rapid change, or some kind of intense experience that kind of comes out of nowhere, that results in a lot of learning for us, whether that is like intellectual learning, like acquiring some kind of strange information, or whether it's learning through direct, like firsthand experience, experiencing something new, or a combination of those. That's what I would expect from this aspect, especially with you can of course look to where 29 Gemini falls in your chart. You may be learning something new or acquiring some kind of new skill or information in that part of your life that's represented by that part of your chart. Um, okay, but yeah, on Sunday, same day, Mercury enters Cancer. Um, so of course that changes the intellectual focus. There's a little bit less frenetic, scattered, Gemini energy. Um, Mercury's kind of winding down a little bit as it enters Cancer. Um, I actually think Mercury in Cancer is pretty interesting. Cancer is, I think, a much more practical sign than most people give it credit for. Cancer is the most emotional sign, but there is a certain like pragmaticism and intuition that comes with that heavy emotional focus. So Mercury in Cancer it's a very intuitive transit. It adds some much needed water to this chart. Moon is of course in Scorpio, but of course that will change in one, like 1 or 2 days. Um, so we really don't have a lot of water in this chart. So Mercury in Cancer does add like some kind of intuition and emotional practicality, which I was just talking recently about how if you have too much analytical energy, it can actually be destabilizing. Like you can be swept away with like ideas and not grounded to common sense, if that makes sense. Um, so strangely, although it may sound counterintuitive, Mercury entering Cancer can actually give us more practicality than this like huge abundance of Gemini energy. But yeah, I'll talk about that as well as Jupiter entering Cancer in next week's forecast. Plus, we have a full moon as well, so definitely a lot going on. Really exciting week next week. But yeah, I hope you have a great week, and I'll see you next week.